Hey, good morning. It is that time. It's 10 o'clock in Barbados and across the Eastern Caribbean. I hope you're doing all right. In Barbados, today, June 30th, yes, the final day of another month already. But we woke up to lots of thunder and lightning and rain. And I thought it was wonderful. I mean, if it's traumatic for you, I understand you may not share the same view, but for me, the rain is quite relaxing, and when the rest of nature is taking its course, provided I'm out of danger, and I hope definitely that you were too. All's well and good with me. So, however, all that rain would have caused some school closures, but those doing their CXC examinations, their CAPE exams, they were still expected to show up, if not at their own secondary schools, at the closest exam center. You just got a peek at outside. Hopefully we'll be able to share that with you again. But the rain just started coming down more. And from the little I heard in terms of updates just before the show, we can expect more of this rain as the day progresses. So once any updates come officially from the Met Office, we will do our best to share them with you. If not during the course of my 10 to 12, definitely during CBC News Day, which will come immediately after. So just, you know, if you still have to go out into the weather, if you're driving, if you're going to be a pedestrian using public transportation, just try and be safe. Whatever means you're using to get around, just be safe. And of course, you need to take along an umbrella. So if you usually just leave it in the house, remember to put it in the car. And if you always are prepared with that in your bag somewhere, because you know you could need it at any time, well, good for you. Just be safe. And as you stand at the public transport stops, the bus stops, just be aware of the water, and motorists do the same. Please be aware of where there are water settlements, because people still have to go about and do their business. I may need some socks for my toes before the show is over, and I'm not complaining, this AC is definitely working. And I mean, we have had some hot days earlier in the year, and then of course last year I remember it was a super hot summer. So I'm not complaining, but just saying you may want to prepare yourself as much as possible, dependent on the space you're heading into. So with that said, I really do trust you're continuing to pay attention to the COVID-19 protocols and doing the things that you really ought to be doing. Remember to do the things that you ought to be doing. You know, you've got to wear your masks. You've got to employ that physical distancing where it is possible. And when you head out in your social bubbles, we can certainly make sure that you do still the things that you know you ought to. If you're with your circle, you know how you can regulate your socializing. If you're in a space with other people, well, then you also know what you need to do. If you're moving away from your table, you need to put your mask on, sanitize your hands, wash them where it's possible, and wash them properly, not just with water. You need some soap to really get rid of those germs. So I'm just doing my part to remind you, as you try to make life feel as normal and enjoyable as possible, you still have to be as responsible as possible, because you want to be safe. And we're hearing about all these other variants. The Delta has certainly been causing some complaints. Before, you would have been hearing about many parts of the U.S. allowing citizens who are fully vaccinated to go without their masks, and now they're being encouraged, still wear your mask. I know people, including some relatives there, who were very excited about not having to wear the masks anymore. And my thing was, well, I wasn't taking any chances. I'm still wearing it when I'm in public. I'm still wearing that mask. Even if they said, yay, go ahead. I'm wearing my mask. So let's just do what we need to do and try and keep it safe as possible. Don't forget to keep building up your immune system. That too is important. So my 10 to 12 for today, June 30th. As you know, the final Wednesday of each month, we look back at the topics that we covered, and we covered erectile dysfunction. We talked about the impact on the man's physical health and certainly mental health. So we're going to review things like that, what help is out there. We also took time to talk about child access for men, not just focusing on getting the money, but certainly giving men access to children. We spoke about what men want in relationships. Is there or was there an answer? Is there really a definite answer? The discourse has all been interesting. We also took the time to focus on paternity leave. It's a right. It's a right for men. So it shouldn't be, we want to move away from it being a courtesy, but really a right, so that if we're seriously looking at making family units stronger and giving men that fair opportunity to do what they ought to and what we all want them to do when they're in that position, which is be fathers and be great fathers, we want to take them as seriously and help them be present as possible for as much as possible during the course of the pregnancy. You know, you hear people say, we're pregnant, but usually the female, obviously because of the physical disposition, she's the one carrying the baby. But it is important, it's so important that that support is there throughout. And my heart goes out to women who don't have that. So for those gentlemen who are being gentlemen and doing the right thing, who want to be there, we have to look at making it all possible. So I had some interesting conversations over the course of the past few weeks, and so we're going to look back at many of those topics. So my guests today, we couldn't have everyone back, of course, but we will make sure and at least look back at each of those areas. So Gerald Walcott, Membership Officer with Men's Empowerment Network Support, is back with us. Brittany Brathwaite, an HR consultant, she's going to join us today as well, and her specific focus was paternity leave, obviously from that human resources perspective. Dr. John Franklin, a urologist, he'll talk with us about erectile dysfunction and other health issues like prostate cancer, as we focus on prostate health and how one can certainly impact the other. So Sean Lange, attorney at law, she's joining us again because she shared her personal story as well as her professional expertise in what is needed as far as child access is concerned. Ryan McCollin, he is the Assistant Secretary Treasurer with the Men's Organization. He was also there to help share some pointers on relationships and what men want, you know, as we really try to make things the best they can be. So I will have a chat with each of these individuals during the course of my 10 to 12. I hope you'll stick around for the conversation. And yeah, let's enjoy the weather and some great talk together. Stay tuned. Back with you now as we get into our first conversation. As mentioned, we have a urologist joining us, so we're going to jump right into that aspect of our conversation. We focused on erectile dysfunction, and I wanted to make sure that we review all these matters so that the information is shared, and what's left for you to do is act and share. That's what we want. So let me say good morning and welcome to Dr. John Franklin. Great to have you joining us across the miles. Technology is good.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. So first of all, tell us a little bit about what got you interested in this area of specialty urology.
Oh, wow.
I know,
For
right?
me, that was I the decision was made in medical school, actually. So I always wanted to do medicine from a little kid, and knew as I was growing up that my interest was in the surgical subspecialty areas. And it was just a matter of elimination. I rotated on urology. I liked it very much, and the rest is history.
Clearly. And we're happy to have expertise like yours here on My 10 to 12. So I want you to now, just for those who may have missed it, define urology, well, not urology, define erectile dysfunction and how it impacts a man.
So, erectile dysfunction is the inability to obtain a sustainable erection. And it does affect men emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
physically, and so it is a major problem, and particularly in our community where men are oftentimes reluctant to discuss health-related issues. It can manifest in other sort of social dynamics, uh, potentially things like alcoholism, physical abuse. I mean, so it is an issue that the men and the women need to know that this is something that can be addressed. There may be other factors related to erectile dysfunction. As a man ages, in our community particularly, there is the comorbidities like high blood pressure, diabetes. Actually, when I talked about a little bit about alcoholism, that too can contribute. So discovering, uh, admitting, I should say, to erectile dysfunction may be just a tip of the iceberg in terms of a man's overall health.
Okay.
So it is important.
Is some who can you or who would you say is predisposed to being impacted by erectile dysfunction? I want to hear some more about that.
So men of all ages. So it's not uncommon to find very young men who
Mm-hmm.
can present with erectile dysfunction. Sometimes it is psychogenic, and so the they need to have a really a full evaluation. But particularly as men age, get into their middle age, and then the like I said, the associated risk factors like high blood pressure, diabetes, which is so common in our community.
Okay. So you're saying then that while you're saying that these chronic non-communicable diseases are common, therefore erectile dysfunction is a common problem as well. We want to
It
really
is a,
paint a picture
it is a, it
we
is a common problem.
wow.
It is a common, and it needs to be understood that it's a common problem. That it is a medical problem, and so
Mm-hmm.
you get, like I said, you get those social dynamics where there's blame cast, there's a sense of guilt, inadequacy, and it's important that, and both the men and the women to have an understanding that this is a condition that is not the fault. It's not just in the mind and will, the willpower. You're not trying hard enough, kind of stuff. It is really a more organic. It's related to blood vessels. It's related to the nervous system. It's related to not just the anatomy, but the
Mm-hmm.
physical condition of the penis itself.
Okay. So when should the male become concerned? Because you've mentioned so many dynamics. Like you could be going through a lot and you're mentally just not there, and it may not work as it should, but when should a man be concerned that he could have erectile dysfunction and seek help?
Well, when there's failure,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you alluded to the occasional um, um, occasions when there may be a bad experience.
Mm-hmm.
If there's that bad experience, not in the mood, bad experience, and but the next time around there is success, well, that's a bad experience. But if that is a persistent problem, then that should be considered a factor that needs to be addressed.
Okay. Well, tell me about the help that is out there because I am sure, even though there may be some resistance to knowing what is going on and getting the help, there is help. So, what can you tell me in terms of what kind of help is available and possibly right here in Barbados?
Well, certainly. First, speak to your doctor,
Mm-hmm.
and you can start with your general practitioner, and then for further evaluation, speak to a urologist. And there are a number of urologists in Barbados. I'm also practicing in Barbados, and so this would be the course of action for that individual. And I don't want to just say the male, and should be the interested party also,
Mm-hmm.
a partner also, to support that male in that journey.
Yeah. Prostate cancer is one of the other things that has been plaguing men. And, perhaps that would impact a man or cause erectile dysfunction as well. What can you tell us about that? And again, we want to know what literal help is there. What can you tell me about prostate cancer, first of all, and ED?
So, yeah, the relationship between prostate cancer and ED would be mostly as it relates to treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the relationship of the prostate to the penis, the nerve fibers that contribute to erections is very very close. They run along the prostate. These are the nerves that run along the prostate, much like the inner strip of a banana, and so they're very close. Treatment, whether it's surgery, radiation, freezing of the prostate, have a risk of injuring the nerves, and so that's a potential consequence. Now that said, men should not be afraid to seek evaluation for prostate cancer risk because prostate cancer will kill you, erectile dysfunction won't.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a number of treatments for erectile dysfunction, even after surgery or any treatment for the prostate, meaning whatever the cause of erectile dysfunction, be it some other organic form like diabetes, high blood pressure, aging, surgery for prostates, radiation for prostates, there are treatments for erectile dysfunction. Prostate cancer is a very prevalent disease in our community, particularly among men of African descent. It's common in the Caribbean. They're, aging men. So for men age 40 and upwards, they should get checked, screened, talk to their doctors about getting an evaluation for prostate cancer.
Why so prevalent among men in the Caribbean? Is this cultural?
No. So the understanding that this is more of a genetic risk.
Okay.
So it's more pertinent to uh, race, ethnic background than it
Mm-hmm.
is cultural. There are no, we still don't know in terms of I mean, environmental factors
Mm-hmm.
what causes prostate cancer. We know that the risk um, is higher in certain populations, and it is probably the highest, and this is in men of African descent, and this is wherever they exist in the Caribbean, in the United States, in Africa. So that risk is there, and the men need to be checked. And we have one of the other concerns would be our healthcare systems are challenged in some ways,
Right.
but we have to, deal with that. It needs to have some level of vigilance on the part of the individuals to seek out that care. And I
Okay.
mean, the cultural part of having the phobia of an exam, the phobia of wanting to know, can lead to late diagnoses and the harm of presenting with an advanced prostate cancer.
Okay. I ask that too because often persons who have been impacted, they change diet, and you mentioned alcohol earlier. So there are things that you would tend to do in social settings or do a lot of that people often changed. So I wondered too if that was part of the situation, of the reasoning.
So that's an important question, and that's asked often by the patients. Like, what can I do to improve my risk? Is there some diet? My response to that question is think overall health. There's no particular diet that benefits the male as it relates to prostate cancer health. Uh, what is important, though, that the prostate is just one organ in a big system, right? Our
Mm-hmm.
human body. And we should be thinking of overall health. And the best target for overall health is, I tend to say, good heart diet, a diet that's um, sort of tailored to improve our cardiovascular system. And whether that's reducing the amount of calories, whether fat intake, uh, that's what I would recommend to patients. Diet,
Okay.
exercise
For general good health.
for general good health.
Okay, so Dr. Franklin, what help is there once you've gotten your assessment? Say you're told you are impacted by erectile dysfunction, whether it was related to treatment from prostate cancer or because of some genetic condition that you've inherited. You're impacted, but you still want to have the best quality of life, which extends to your sexual health and your sex life. So what help is there? What assistance is there? Apparatus? Is there medication that is being used to assist men who are impacted by ED?
Yeah, so there are quite a few. First, that overall evaluation could lead to uh, a discussion around the psychogenic contribution to that ED, and that
Mm-hmm.
may be all, right?
Right.
Getting the guy to improve his confidence. Beyond that, and today, in some ways, remarkable, we don't think of it as such, but we have medications. They're a class of drugs that are commonly given. And it's interesting that within our community, there are phobias around those drugs. So I'm talking about the Viagra and the Cialis, those types of drugs that are quite effective in um, treating erectile dysfunction. Unfortunately, I've seen in multiple islands where men come in and, oh, I heard these terrible rumors about what can happen if I take this drug. And that's unfortunate. Uh, the drugs have side effects. It's important to know some of the risk in taking the drugs, but many of the sort of loose sort of hearsay that exists
Mm-hmm.
in a community is sometimes, and most times I should say, inaccurate. But it does cause our men to recoil when given an opportunity to have these drugs. Besides the drugs, there are injectables into the body of the penis. There are medications that can be given into the urinary tract, into the urethra. And then there are devices that can be placed directly in the penis, what we call implants, that can produce erections. So there are from medications to counseling to injectables, like I said, and surgical procedures to reconstitute erections in the man.
Yeah. And obviously, you start at what would be the simplest, or least invasive first, checking to see what actually helps the situation. So each situation is an individual case, treated that way, I imagine.
Yes, so the recommendation is you're correct, communicating with the patient and deciding which treatment is best. There is the idea that a treatment course has to follow a certain path. Well, that's not necessary. A gentleman can decide, you know what, I don't want to try medication. I want to do surgery. I don't want to try medication. I want to do injections. It is what uh, that individual arrives at after being informed of the options available to him, the risks available that he's exposed to, and then what kind of benefit he expects from any particular treatment.
Yeah. You mentioned that often this is something that occurs when men are getting older. But you also mentioned that younger men, it's happening to younger men. Is that concerning? I mean, it's not some, I imagine that's complex. Are they,
Well, it is. So the
what,
thing, the well, let's say
go ahead.
the good thing about that is that it's not as common in
Right.
younger men.
Okay.
So, and so it can be a multi-factorial. There are young men who have diabetes and who may end up with erectile dysfunction. It could be largely psychogenic. So they could be related to injury. So there are a number of factors that can lead, and then sometimes what we call idiopathic, we just can't figure out why. But a young male will show up and he has difficulties. Usually, I would, even if I were to start those individuals with medications, I would approach them in a way that there's a potential for them to recover and get back to normal. So it's like use this as a bridge until maybe you constitute your confidence and the like, and oftentimes that works. But that's typically a case of uh, psychogenic related erectile dysfunction.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's very interesting. Have you ever had to say a partner change may be needed? I shouldn't.
No, that occurs. Well,
But
and
it's
when I say,
real, right?
well, yeah, because some men will show up and say, I'm performing well this way, but in another occasion, I'm having difficulty. And again, it's possible that again, medications can help. The occasions where it's difficult is maybe very important to them
Mm-hmm.
because, I mean, a relationship is more than just the erectile dysfunction.
Absolutely. Alcohol is also something that you mentioned and people
Yes.
must note. So you're not talking about a social drink or the allowed 2 glasses of wine a day or
No,
something.
no.
Put
I'm
that in
talking about,
perspective for me.
yes. Well, and that too is getting outside of my field, but again, it's oftentimes seen. If I see a gentleman comes in, alcoholism is visible, right? You look at that face, and there's that um, look that we know is associated with someone who consumes too much alcohol, uh, and that is not casual or social drinker. That's a person who's consuming several beers a day and think it's okay, and maybe they're closeted. They don't do it at the bar; they're doing it at home, and so that requires counseling. Cigarette smoking is a major factor too. But as it relates to alcohol, yes, that's occurring. That's a risk to that person, and should be managed and tailored. And sometimes it means complete cessation because there's an addiction.
Okay, well, I hope that you'll be able to check back in with us when we get back together closer to the ending of the show, so that you can talk about screening, and reminding men of how important it is to get screening and the right amount. But certainly lots of good information there as it relates to erectile dysfunction. So thank you so much, Dr. Franklin, for joining us across the miles. We
You're welcome.
definitely appreciate the information. And certainly you'll hear more about the local connection to Dr. Franklin as well. So we're going to take a quick break, and after that I'm going to have another guest as we continue to share. You're going to hear from Ryan McCollin. He never quite got to complete his list of points on what men want in a relationship as we try to bridge the gap. It's coming up on my 10 to 12. We're continuing with my 10 to 12 for today, June 30th. June 30th. We are on the heels of summer. Whew. Oh my. And if it were a usual summer, we would already have our Crop Over Festival in full swing. Boy, I miss that. I miss the energy that goes along with it. So you just have to create it in your own little space. That's what you have to do. That's what you have to do. We'll keep you up to date with whatever little things are happening. But whatever you do, remember to do so responsibly. So we're continuing now as we look back at some of the points that came out when we had our discussion on what men really want in a relationship. And the guys from that's the Men's Empowerment Network Support. They will probably tag team, but we're going to get started with Mr. Ryan McCollin. He is Assistant Secretary Treasurer with Men's Empowerment Network Support. Great to see you again this week.
Hello.
Now, last time you did not quite get to complete your list, so just remind us of the points that you would have been going through.
Some of the points that I would have been going through, one of the things I would have said as it relates to what men want in a relationship, it was primarily about, I remember I would have said, is it more about what men want or is it what men need?
Mm-hmm.
And we identify clearly that a need is different than a want. And want is more about your desires, which change and alters. Wants is more about a desire which changes and alters, and a need is more sustainable in life. And I would have said men need encouragers, persons to fan the flames underneath them and encourage them, and leaders and cheerleaders, yes, and so on. And one of the other things I can say that men need is sexual fulfillment. And what is interesting along with this particular question is, for me, it's interesting. Female wants the same thing too, but since we're dealing with men, I'll stick there.
It's quite interesting because none of you mentioned that last week, No, I don't
And I love a
recall
fair balance. You
anybody
see, for me, I
mention
love a
that
fair
last
balance.
week.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I love a fair balance, and I think it is important to understand that we are about the same thing. It's just that men express it different, while females express it different.
Mm-hmm.
So with our right brain emotion and the left brain logic is expressed different. So for example, a boy's briefcase totally different than a female or her bag.
Mm-hmm.
It's different. So at the end of the day, their differences is just expressed differently. So a man might not say he love a lady all the time, but how does he express that love? He may rub her shoulder, he may rub her hand through her hair, he may rub her back, he may slap her on a cheek, kiss her on the cheek, and things happen. So he express it different. Always good to assume that when you don't hear "I love you," that it means that I don't care for you and I don't love you. No, we do it different. We express it different.
Just to
But
be
however,
clear, you said
I say
one
if you
of the
say
expressions of love may be a slap on the cheek.
yes,
Okay.
a
And
slap on the cheek and a kiss on the cheek. There's two different cheeks.
okay, I just wanted to be clear. Carry on.
Yes, please. So, sexual fulfillment can be harnessed through identifying as one of my good authors, Gary Chapman, with love language. So, persons
Mm,
need to dive into identifying what their love languages are so they
yes.
can better have an understanding as to whether it is touch, if they love gifts, if they prefer to have affirmation and so on and things like
Acts
that.
of
So, it
kindness.
is acts of kindness, right? Things like that. So people need to get into. Remember, I said last time it is about intimacy. So you have to know what you really want so that you can go after it and then bring it to the table so that both partners in a relationship can add value to each other and catapult from there because it's reciprocation. It's about
Right.
reciprocation. So then, not only sexual fulfillment, men need lovers.
Okay.
What
Keep
do a
going.
man
I'm
need?
listening.
Lovers. So a lover should not only be viewed in the negative, where a man or female would cheat. I think whether a mate or a spouse, you could be a lover. Present yourself to be kinky, be sexy. Put on whatever you choose. You do whatever you choose, and be a lover. Be a lover to that man,
Mm-hmm.
and make sure that he's the center of your attention. Give him no reason, in other words, to put his focus elsewhere. All right, I'll take this risk here and dive in deep to
Mm-hmm.
even say balance it even if you become a nymphomaniac. Let him come to a stage where you say, "Baby, hold up, baby, give him a chance tonight, baby, give him a chance today. Take it easy, calm down a little bit, let me breathe a little bit, babes." Right, so things like that. Be a lover,
Well,
and
if you
and
create
and
interest, then you have to be thankful for the interest.
yes, yes, indeed. You see, so you gotta be able to handle what you spark,
But
what you
that
stir.
definitely needs to go both ways. And this is often
Exactly,
one of the issues
exactly.
because
Hmm.
women are expected to do these things for in the
Right,
relationship. But
right,
sometimes, or often, men forget to say these things and, say sweet things and do sweet things and, see that woman as, in a sexual way. They may only see them as, oh,
correct.
the mother of, or, that's an individual
Unfortunate,
still. So that's where
unfortunate. Correct.
sometimes things go a little
Friction,
imbalanced.
imbalance. Yes, please. And that's unfortunate. However, like I said last time, it is critical that men understand who they are and know what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you let your past dictate your future and you make excuses constantly for not fixing you, then you're living constantly in the past failures and you're not intending to make it right. You got to make it right. I remember one good friend said, imagine dark coat in a glass, and you have to imagine that this coat can become clear. What do you do? What do you do to try to get a dark glass of coat become clear and clean?
I just
So
drink
what do you
it.
do? You see? So what do you do? Have you ever thought about taking it and putting it to the underneath the top of the tap and let it clean itself up? Keep filling it with something different, in other words. So
Mm.
fill the void of darkness with something that can replicate who you truly are and ought to become, which
Right.
is a loving, kind person. Fill the void. Fill it with something, because we limit what we can become because we are in doubt and we have fear. And therefore, like I said last time from my example, if I had never taken heed to becoming a better man and a better person, I would have wallowed in the toxins that I despise from my past, and it would have killed me. It would have thwarted my life. And would that be fear? What, should I become a carbon copy of the great original that I ought to be? No,
Not
I want
at
to be a great
all.
original. I want to be a great original. So men need to understand that love yourself, love upon yourself, and take care of yourself. That when you present yourself to the lady, you can guarantee, you understand, she can feel pleased to know, hey, and mind you, even if she's not accustomed to that, you give it because it is who you are. Don't stop doing it,
So self-care
because
is
here's
what
where
you're preaching here as well.
it is important.
Yeah.
Right. And out of the self care, from the example I'm here, it is critical now that you have intelligence play a vital part within a relationship. Intelligence is key, because a partner not understanding love, and you giving love in great measure, whether it is the male or the female, whoever is giving the love, but primarily we're dealing with men here. If a man is giving a female love and she don't know how to respond to it, he has to know the capacity in which he can continue with the courage to give that. Intelligence plays a partner where if the female recognizes, hey, this man really love and care for me, I must get myself together. How can I help him? How can I
So
meet him where
inspiring
he's
each
at?
other.
And you got
Right.
to do that and motivate each other, because you got to keep fanning the flames in a relationship with each other, right? It's not a one-way street. Both partners play a critical role in fanning the flames. So a man needs to have a lover, lover, be a lover. I remember a great book I read a long time named Set Starts in the Kitchen. So, you start it in the kitchen, you start it in the car, you do it on the phone, you're calling her every now and then from the office, hi babe, I'm just thinking about you, how your day going.
So don't
Things
stop
like that.
doing the sweet things that you used to do when you
Don't
were
stop it.
dating or courting, whichever you
Don't
want to
don't
call
stop.
it.
Don't stop it. Keep it
Agree.
going, and accelerate if you can on it.
Accelerate.
If you can improve on it, improve on it.
Yeah.
I'm a strong believer. If you can do that, you do that. You improve
Yeah.
on it.
There were some
So if you
very
haven't done something that you
interesting,
have done before, just try
right.
to come up with other creative concept ideas and strategies, even if it's asking, hi bro, listen guy, I would like to try a different way to help my baby, and in some way to boost some love. What you can help me to do? It's not just about flowers. It's not just about, simple basic thing. Try a different way. I'm a man that can cut a hot dog in half and put a candle in it and set it up on the table, and I enjoy it, right? Hey, you know what I mean? If the light bill go off, it doesn't matter to me, because I am now sitting home, and I creative like that
Right.
because I did these things for myself.
Right. So,
Right?
what
I
did you
love
get
me.
any feedback? Because we had some very interesting other views shared. The other men who were gathered, we had the canon Reverend Peter Haynes join us, and he spoke about the biblical perspective of what a man ought to be and what he really wants in terms of the virtues and that kind of thing. But about people being able to balance and just respect and communicate with each other. We heard DJ Ras, Shane Edwards, share his views, and he found that many women, he was concerned that many women didn't share enough, literally, of the financial burden, and he thought that if there was so much of a push for equality generally, it should also be there when it comes to spending money or buying gifts for the man, for example. It shouldn't just be one way. Did you get any feedback, after the show? What are some of the things that men wanted to share or would have liked to add?
I actually didn't get much feedback, Cassandra. My life is one where my circle of friends is very small. And I am the one who do a lot more research to gather information and so on, right? So if yes, we would sometimes push out some stuff. We have a lot of
Yes.
debate on a lot of things. It's quite interesting
With the
within the
men's
chat.
group. Mm-hmm.
The men's group, oh boy, we have so much debates. It's marvelous. It's marvelous, right? And a number of things were shared, but not primarily after I came off the last show on particular things. But I'll annotate the fact that Ras was saying primarily, especially this area of finances.
Mm-hmm.
It is when I did some research looking at in America, it is said that most relationships, a female would not stay with a man if he loses his job, and that percentage was very high, right? It was very very high,
Mm-hmm.
and I was curious as to why, and it has a ripple effect across the globe, you know, and I think because men are known to be the providers, protectors, cultivators, visionaries, and the leaders. Yes, but in all fairness, to when tables turn and the weight has to be carried by a female, what is wrong with, especially when you are
Mm-hmm. Carry on. Okay. The internet seems to be acting
and
up. Okay, go ahead.
what
You
is
might
wrong with
have to
filling the
resume the beginning of your sentence there before we
right?
go to
Okay,
break.
can I be heard now? Is that
Yes, go
clear?
ahead.
Right. So I was saying, what is wrong with a female filling the void, especially when she's loved, nourished, cherished, respected, right? There's that loyalty and so on. And I'll balance that by saying a relationship should not be a case of what I can do for you, but what you can do for me. It's not, no, not what you can do for me, but what I can do for you.
So,
It's
with
critical.
everybody thinking that
Right.
reciprocal. Mm-hmm.
Reciprocal. So at the end of the day, what is wrong with a female filling the void to help in a man lose his job? There's nothing wrong. He should not be deemed as you sitting down and you're not doing anything in this house and you're waiting for me to serve you and all the negative things. No, sometimes it really gets tough. It really
Yeah.
gets tough.
All right.
And what is wrong with filling the void and still loving him regardless, without bashing him,
Yeah.
encourage him, motivate him, bring some options to him for job options to him then, and help him
Help him
along
get
the
back
lines
on
that
his
way,
feet.
and help him get back on his feet. And you
Nothing
hold the
wrong with
fort.
that. Nothing wrong with
Nothing
that.
wrong
If
with
it's
that.
possible, nothing wrong with that at all. That should be
Nothing
the
wrong with that at
natural
all.
progression. All right, you
I
stay
think that's pretty
close.
fair.
Yes, I think so. Stay close. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to bring in another gentleman who is a part of the men's network. We're going to hear more this time from Gerald Walcott. He is membership officer, and he shared his experience on another topic that men are challenged with often, and that's access to children. We'll be back after the break. of the month of June. Several interesting topics we discussed, and so we're just reviewing those points as much as possible to just give you that information. Information is always helpful if you're looking to make some positive changes. But right now, we're going to continue by chatting with Gerald Walcott. He is Membership Officer with Men's Empowerment Network Support. We were just hearing from the Assistant Secretary Treasurer as we looked at what men want in relationships. But one of the things they definitely want is to have a good relationship and a good relationship with their children, those men who are trying to do the right thing as fathers. So good morning to you, Mr. Walcott. Great to have you back with us today.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me back. It's a pleasure.
It really is mine as well. So last time we never really got to complete our conversation, and that was for reasons outside of your control. So I hope the power behaves today with the weather we're having. But just to give a recap of some of the challenges in terms of child access, the frequency with which you see this being brought up among men's discussions. What can you share with our audience about that?
Well, it is quite frequent in most cases. It's always the initial, the man, he's doing what he can. It may not be the best. You know, the environment we exist in today, it may not be the best, but he's doing what he can. And then there's still a lot of resistance, even when it goes to court. The money is always there, but when it comes to the access, it's always a problem. I mean, your colleague Colin alluded to that last time around too with his personal experience. But yeah, that has been very, very, very challenging to a lot of men, and you often go quietly into the night and not suffer that hurt alone.
Yes. So if you could have an ideal situation in terms of access and based on what these men are sharing, I know you can't give specifics about anyone else's situation, but based on what they're sharing, how would you like to see child access addressed as far as fathers are concerned?
It should be even. Because even in Australia, that is the common practice. It is shared access. Everyone gets equal time in with the children, and I don't think it's that difficult. We just need to change our mindset in terms of how we perceive men. Men too need to change their mindset in how they perceive themselves, right? Because back to a bit of what Ryan mentioned in terms of women will leave the men because they lost the jobs. No, chances are that man showed himself as a glorified wallet. So, and we need to seek more out of a relationship than just being the glorified wallet. All the other stuff that he would just work out in terms of what we need, that's what we need to be looking for within a woman. We can't expect to find the first woman that come back and accept and think that is it. We need to go through, for the lack of better words, a screening process. And I think that is where the courtship comes. But we tend to be fast. We just want to jump on the bus and ride without really looking at the road. That could be a problem.
Interesting analogy. Very interesting analogy. So you're saying then people need to slow down generally, get to know people, figure out what it is they want to see if that's something that you want.
Exactly. Because I'm not one really to a religious person per se, but the Bible even mention it. It's not about being unequally yoked, and that does not just pertains to religion. That pertains to what you want out of life. Do I want to accelerate? Am I comfortable at where I am? All that is tied into making a fruitful relationship.
Right.
Find someone who shares a lot of your ideas. You can share all,
Right.
And both of you need to push and pull and tweak.
Right. You mentioned something interesting there, that chances are the man presented himself to the woman who would have left him once he lost his job as a glorified wallet. Are you saying that that is something men do? And if so, why?
It is what is expected, indirectly or directly. It is expected that, oh, I'm man, so I'm supposed to be the hold the financial brand. I mean, even as you walk around and hear some men approach women, man, I could use this, I could take care of you. You could take care of me. You know, why can't she take care of me? Right? And it's how that guy value himself. He sees himself as nothing more than a taken care of and not wanted to be taken care of. And trust me, we need to be taken care of. A lot of us, me especially. High
Plug.
maintenance.
So like, what do you want? I mean, we've been hearing it. We heard Ryan's way of saying, he shared some clear points on things that he believes men really want. What is that ideal, or if not the ideal, what is your view on what men want?
I don't believe in ideal. I think that was a narrative set up by the romance novels.
It's
That
sweet
is
though.
just a mere fantasy. You have to make it ideal.
Right.
What you are willing to put up with, what you are willing to sacrifice. And that is what will make the ideal. But you don't go out there and find the ideal man or the ideal woman. That is romanticism. A mere fantasy, Sidney Sheldon and those fantastic artists. You need to put in the work. Put in the
Right.
work, you can get out. You
As
don't,
you
can't get nothing.
as you speak of putting in the work, and we bring it back to something you were clearly very passionate about, which is the access to children for fathers, not just the cash. You don't just want to be the wallet. You want to be able to see your children. And a very interesting point was made by the attorney at law who joined us. She will join us again later, which is men have a right to see their children, money or not, because that is a right, and we could
Sandra,
look at that.
I'm not hearing a thing you are saying.
Oh
You ran,
no!
I know really, really hard and wrong. I know everything, all the audio.
Oh dear. Okay, so again, very interesting point shared, but we're hearing the critical part of what is being said there about fairness and sharing. That's what we want. Ryan, perhaps you can come back in and continue to share with us and give that feedback, because you are also present during these support groups, and you hear the challenges, the various challenges that the men face. So relationships, yes, and relationships with children, their children would be one of the challenges, wanting that fairness. What can you share or add to the conversation as it relates to some of the other challenges that men are sharing? Mr. McCollin?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
This access discussion has been weighing on me for a very long time. Because I am touched by this in many ways. Now, I would have loved what the attorney at law would have said the last time. These matters cannot be dealt with the system that is there now. And it will have to be dealt with outside of the system, and you need legal reform. And I'm very touched because children are always, if parents cannot get along with themselves, the children would be damaged most of the time.
They're the ones who suffer.
And I know about this very well. I know about this very well. Three wise men, and I know about this very well. And this whole thing about access within the legal system, to me, is very unfair and unfortunate. And yes, there are good fathers out there like myself and Gerald and many others who fight this giant.
Mm-hmm.
And this giant is very difficult to fight. I have come to a place within my heart, honestly, Cassandra. And for those that can hear me, Radio Land, I have God. I make up in my mind and my heart, loving my children from afar, knowing that they will grow up. And one day I will be able to share, if necessary, my part of the story with my kids as it relates to this whole access. However, access within the law court, to me, I put it this way. Why is it that it cannot be a fair assessment, number one, rather than a man just being a bank book, a taxi pickup, a play part daddy, or just a last minute resort? It's unfortunate. And I think here a person convinced against their own will is of the same opinion still. And that's unfortunate. Why is it can't be that the court rule where if there's a child involved, normally the mother would normally get the child. Okay. And then the father would have the weekends. Okay. Then the father don't get the child on the weekends. Okay. He tried to have coherent, amicable dialogue about getting the children on the weekend. Why he don't get the children on the weekend? You hear all sorts of excuses. Okay. Some may go back to court to try to challenge it. It still doesn't work out in their favor. Rare small percentage of some, okay, they will get a chance to see the children at start, then it stop again. I had always wondered about why it can't be this way. Some attorney can probably ask me if this is fair or not.
Mm.
In my mind, I'm always thinking, why it couldn't be that? If the court is going to rule, why it cannot be a rule where, I mean, they don't have control over the parents, I must admit, they don't.
Mm-hmm.
But here is what. You have ancillary fees, which is school fees, etc., etc. Both parents will come together and do that. All right? And then, why is it that if whoever parent has the child, why can't you deal with the child in your space? When I have the child in my space, I deal with the child in my space. And when it comes to the ancillary fees, we both come together and deal with the child, and so on. But because of bitterness, anger, resentment, hatred, unforgiveness, and all the things along that line, children are used as a crutch against fathers in this country, and they are not treated fairly. And for those fathers like me and probably others, we suck it up, we have to live on, and we move forward. Because I'm not going to put my life in part just because I can't see my children or don't get to spend time with them, because that means I am reverting backwards and not loving me. No way.
So keep moving forward and keep loving them.
Yes, please. And by the way, I would dare say, I have nothing even against their mom. I would say that on this program. I have nothing against their mom. I can love people, but I have a right to dislike their actions and behaviors.
Correct.
And that is all I dislike.
Yeah. That's the way. Let's get a quick comment in though from Gerald, who was having some issues. The rain was drowning out the audio. So I want you to still finish your point, have your say before we take the break, but we're all going to come back together and chat a little later. So go ahead, Gerald.
Yeah, I will move on a little so back in Ryan again. You see, spoke, and this is what I wanted to end with last time. When he talked about he will continue loving himself, and he's going to move on until that day comes. And though I have not yet rested, probably will not until that day come. But I focus now more on the caliber of man that I will be when that day come, right?
Yeah.
Because it is expected for you to crumble, for you to be so broken, they walk about the place looking popped down, and then that will put truth to all the nonsense they've been trying to feed the children. But if you love yourself, value yourself, you eat good, exercise good, live a good life, right? When those children come, that day they will meet a man that is nothing short of angelic. And to me, that was important for these men who suffer in silence to do, because they will come home. They have no choice, right? And that was the testimony, Miss Sean Lang, hope I call the name right.
Yes, Sean
That was the
Lodge.
testimony by Sean Lodge, right?
Yes.
You know, and hearing that did something to me, you know, because I know that despite I'm not united with my children, and as Ryan said, it was just about selfish and malicious reasons. And one of the most saddening things about it is that my children was taken from me because of a mother, because the mother the mother have died of dengue fever 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that day is when they died as well, right? And the children were plucked from me. The court system really and truly out of my custom acting. One brush for all men, besides the fact that it is me that approached the court. That was not even taken into consideration, saying that I want to be there. It's not that I didn't want to be there and they'll come and try to get me to stand up to my responsibilities. I went to the court because I wanted to own up to my responsibilities. I wanted to deal with my children and was never ever given the opportunity, right? And another thing to the accusations, I think women need to be held accountable for the accusations, because one of the things that they said to me, that I said about me in the court, I was really, really embarrassed for many years and afraid to mention it, right? They said that I sexually molested the children, right? And those accusations caused so much damage to a man,
Yeah.
right? And in the end, it was cleared. All the medical reports and stuff come back saying no signs of it. But what about what the damage to career? What about what the damage
Reputation.
to reputation,
Yes.
right? And these people get to run along freely after warning a person. Well, if I go down the road and hit a man with a rock in the head, I can get a serious charge, I can go answer for it. And he won't get healed. Nobody can see that. But in this society, once tarnished by such statements, you're branded for life.
Yeah.
And this is the first the first line of defense that women bring to the court, and it is go on tap and uncensored. Women need to be held accountable for these accusations. I mean, if the man is found guilty, well, then he got a price to pay.
Yes.
You know, but when it's just an accusation, and really, how could I have done anything to the children when they were not in my presence?
I can hear and feel the pain as you talk, and I am just happy to be able to be part of providing a platform to hear from men who care and want to be there. And I'm just going to say, continue to be support for the other men, so that they have that space, that safe space to talk and share and be supported. We're going to all talk together, and we're going to get to hear from attorney at law Sean Lange again, just so she can remind persons of the help that is there and the steps that can be taken to assist in painful situations like these. But before that, we're going to take a look back as well at the right that men should have to paternity leave if we expect them to be serious about their roles as fathers. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back. Back with you. We were having quite a riveting conversation with a member of the Men's Empowerment Network Support, Mr. Gerald Walcott. We were also hearing from Mr. Ryan McCollum. We're going to chat with them again soon, but again, I think that it is important to hear from them and hear these real situations shared, and hope that it resonates with the right people and that we can see the reform that is being called for and that is clearly needed. I believe in fairness, and if that's what the scales are supposed to do, I mean, we heard the point from the attorney as well, pointing out the black and white situation that exists with the scales of the courts, but we definitely, I think we're in a good place for reform, and hopefully we can have more of these conversations that move to real change taking place so that fairness in these circumstances can be expected, as should be expected. So we're going to continue now with Brittany Brathwaite. She is a human resources consultant. That is her area of specialty, and one of the things that I discussed during the course of the weeks during June, which I dedicated to topics and issues that concern men particularly, paternity leave was one of the things. Brittany Brathwaite, good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Doing well. I know it's difficult for you to join us so we can see your face live, but we're happy with this. We're happy to have your expertise nonetheless. So I want you to just explain again to our audience you know, the importance of something like paternity leave, and certainly how organizations can make it a part of what they do and what they offer to their staff members, and why it is progressive.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to consider the countries who have done it and who are doing it and doing it well. And when we look at places like Switzerland, etc., and they have almost because there's no country thus far that has equity, but the places are countries who have gone as close to their maternity leave stretch for fathers as well with paternity leave. They're seeing increased socioeconomic activity. They are seeing positives in the way that children are being reared. You know, there are wider socioeconomic benefits that are being reaped. But most importantly, it also changes the narrative culturally, and culturally from the inception, from the time a child is a baby, that rearing is something that is relegated to the female or to the maternal person in the relationship. And it helps in constructing differently for particularly children and children who will lead our future what involved parenting looks like.
Yes.
From the organizational standpoint, it is really what you would call, and I wouldn't even say it's forward thinking. At this point, it is present thinking. It
Yes.
is imperative for all organizations who are sustainable to assess what level of paternity leave can be extended and to see, because not all will be able to sustain, a 12-week period as they do with maternity leave. And that's, of course, because in our jurisdiction, maternity leave is something that is paid through via the national insurance scheme.
Hmm.
And therefore, employers make a contribution to that scheme. And many employers, in fact, do not pay salaries during that period. Rather, mothers are allowed to reap that benefit through the NIS scheme. So I think organizations will have to balance how best they can, in fact, implement paternity leave in the absence of that benefit, because what it will mean is also that the organization has to, in fact, pay that person for that leave because there's not the social security benefit right now that exists. So, outside of the organizational advocacy and lobbying for this thing to be implemented, I think there's also an element of policy recreation.
Yes.
And we mentioned that the Minister of Labor during our last segment,
Yes.
he shared there is the intention to have paternity leave, social security protection, which would be a phenomenal thing, because it would mean then that organizations can seamlessly contribute to the NIS scheme and therefore extend paternity leave without having that upfront cost.
Yeah. What can you say about the benefits that this can also bring to the psyche of an employee, and then additional benefits to the work? Because I'm thinking, you hear this expression, happy wife, happy life. What about happy employees, and how they serve organizations better when they're at ease, knowing that they're also there for them? Is that a part of what human resources people still have to think about for the organizations?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's obviously a balance that exists. There's a level of sustainability
Yeah.
in treating to what the business can afford to do, and of course, attempting to ensure that your employees are comfortable. So there's an apt balance that has to be achieved for both the employer and the employee. But I would say this: any business who is looking to be progressive, who is looking to expand virtually outside of Barbados, and even in Barbados, if you're looking to attract talent, we have to be aware of what are the key markers around what talent is looking for, and
Yes.
really good talent. So people and good talent is looking for an environment that creates, or it helps to create a family life balance with your professional life.
Hmm.
Good talent is looking for an environment that incentivizes involved parenting by both parents. These are the markers that a lot of talent, um, through lots of surveys, there are lots of surveys, the Deloitte Millennial Survey, which was issued this year,
Hmm.
and lots of other surveys done regionally and internationally, that are saying to employers what your people and what good talent is looking for are opportunities to balance their family life. I've seen some statistics about people who want to remain working at home because it has changed their relationship fundamentally with their children. So
Yes.
if these are the values that we are seeing, that people that are critical to people, then as employers, as organizational leaders, we have to be thinking about the policies. And paternity leave would be one of those policies that would incentivize good talent to come and stay with us.
Yeah. Well, this is interesting that you're sharing this, because, I want you then, in terms of your own experience, how flexible should organizations be? Is this something you to encourage, that level of flexibility? Because obviously this pandemic definitely showed us how much more we can do from home. At the end of the day, I mean, you got to be responsible if you want to stay employed. Work can be done from home. So what do you want to say about that, and allowing people the option or opportunity to remain that level of flexible?
I think there has to be really an assessment of how productive persons can be and how productive they have been during remote work, and how feasible it is for that to continue for an indefinite period of time. And if that assessment is done, and you have positives around productivity, and you also have positives because persons, feel more inclined to spend more time with their children, and it's
Yes.
genuinely making them a happier person, then from a business perspective, and this really, you don't even have to look at this from an employee perspective, but from a business perspective, that's good for business.
And
So
it
I
just
would say
makes
this
good
is not.
sense.
Absolutely. I would say this is not a conversation that should be relegated to COVID-19 or to a pandemic. This is a conversation that we ought to have had for many years. I'm glad that COVID has thrusted organizations into doing it, but we similarly or equally need to thrust the thinking and the culture around how we manage people into remote work, because a lot of people just still like to see people because they want to see them.
Yeah, it's true. We are social creatures. And
Yes.
your professional view, though, because you did allude to that Deloitte survey, and we are talking about paternity leave. That's one of the things that millennials are looking for, and they're as talent who they are seeing themselves as great talent and desirable talent, that the world is their oyster. What are some of the other things that employers need to look to be offering to pull in some of that good talent? What are some of the other things on their lists that they're looking for in organizations?
This is now the Deloitte survey is the Deloitte Millennial Survey, and it focuses on millennials, Gen Xers, Gen Yers, etc.
Yes.
So some of the key benchmarks that were flagged by a high percentage of persons in this survey, of course, circumvented flexible arrangements. And that means remote work and those type of flexible arrangements. But it also circumvented the ability for non-exclusive work, which is interesting, right?
Quite.
It yes, it tells us that the generation that's looking for work wants to be committed to you, but doesn't necessarily want to be tied down only to you. They want the flexibility to dabble in other things, and that in fact could be a barrier for increasing their commitment and loyalty to you. So I would say, to employers, that's a huge one to monitor, because many people curate roles that they expect exclusivity around.
Yes.
But one of the benchmarks for good talent is that they want to be able to dabble in other things, and you should probably consider how that may be feasible, subject to what you need.
So that's the baby boomers arrangement, typically, where you had to be exclusive. But is
Yes.
there a way now, do you see it as a huge challenge for organizations who would have worked with that particular arrangement, more so the traditional type of arrangement? Do you see a difficult transition to allow for this kind of flexibility? Your
I
HR
think
perspective.
the most difficult component of that is, as I said before, our thinking and our inability in many
Okay.
cases to wrap our head around how this will function. And whether or not this person, while they're non-exclusive, will in fact deliver on time and will in fact always, be there when I need them or on call. And there really is no way to know but to try. And I've seen it work in many instances. And allowing people to have that little side hustle can do tremendous wonders for their productivity, for their commitment, etc. So I'd say, some persons are apprehensive, and that would be employers and organizations. But those who have tried, but of course tried with a framework,
Yes.
thus far they are seeing positive results.
Excellent. Brittany Brathwaite, thank you. We started with a special focus on paternity leave. It's a right to for men if we're taking this seriously. So we hope you can come on back for that final huddle. But we appreciate your input on paternity leave and structuring your organizations in such a way that it allows for various flexibilities to allow employees to be the best that they can be. Thank you so much, Brittany.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to hear from attorney at law, Xion Lange. And we're continuing now with my 10 to 12, the final edition for the month of June. And I certainly appreciate your watching. I didn't even tell you, but by now you should know this. You have the opportunity to send your comments or your questions via Facebook. We're streaming live, so you always have the opportunity to do so. If something moves you to share, you're always welcome to do that. But our final guest, is attorney at law Shion Lange, as I mentioned, and she shared a part of herself, her own story. Last time we had an opportunity to talk about access for children, access for men to their children, for their fathers to have that same opportunity to share with their children's developmental processes. So great to have you back with us today, Ms. Lange.
Hi, Cassandra. Thank you for having me.
A pleasure. And you made so many amazing points. I'm sure you shared some eye-openers as well. And we appreciate that kind of frankness. So today I wanted to give you that opportunity again as we round off the month and take our look back at the topics covered, to just share again on what the process entails and what can be done and the help and options that are out there. Because every time I hear these men talking about what they have to deal with, it really pains my heart. And I feel like it is unfortunate, so unfortunate that they don't get a fair break, as they say, even when they head to court. Maybe it's not been that story for all men, but clearly it happens often enough for a number of them to be very concerned about it. So I give you a chance to offer and share your experience and expertise on what can be done and the way to have that stick-to-itiveness that is necessary in this kind of circumstance.
Well, I would like to repeat, as I said when I appeared the last time, that I am an advocate for emotional intelligence,
Yes.
particularly in these situations. And I think that most often you get ideal outcomes or compromises in situations where persons choose to deal with each other before going to the court for a solution. And as I said, the problem with the court is that the court is trying to apply the law in a very black and white fashion. And the reality is that in almost all family situations, there is a lot of gray area. I think that we need to continue to fund organizations that assist with mediation instead of litigation. And for men that find themselves before the court, they need to be proactive. As I suggested, don't just come to the court and try to think up on the spot what you are going to say to move the court to your position.
True.
Come with suggestions. Try to address the things that you know this person is likely to bring up as issues. If you know that they're going to say, well, they have a problem with pickup on a Saturday morning because that's when they work, try to think of ways so that when you appear before the court, you are presenting yourself as someone who is actively trying to find a solution and a way to make it work. I also want to add that I know that there will be situations where the court simply has not addressed it in a way that you think is fair. And the reality is that a lot of the time, there is no easy solution in those circumstances. But you have to try your best, and you have to know that eventually a time will come when you will be able to see your children again and to negotiate that relationship with your child on your own terms outside of the court and outside of what the other parent or the other person in control of that child may want. I heard one of your earlier guests speaking about accusations being made against him, which ultimately prevented him from having access to his child, even though he was exonerated. And these are the types of difficult situations that the courts and the people are dealing with. And I certainly do not agree with that sort of thing happening.
Right.
But it is a reality. And the reality is that a court is trying at all times to do what is in the best interest of the child from their perspective. And sometimes the result of that is the court feeling as though, or the court thinking that a child not having access to a certain person is less of a risk than having that access. And as I say it, I'm sure that people are listening and thinking, but that also does not make sense. And that's why I continue to say the court is not, to me, the right fit. And I don't say that to bash, I'm not trying to bash any magistrate or any judge, because I think that they are all trying to do the best. But the reality is that a magistrate and a judge, they're not a psychologist, they're not a counselor, they are not specialized in dealing with manipulative behaviors from a technical point of view. So it is very difficult to try to expect these people to address these issues with that sort of complexity.
Mm-hmm.
They are trying their best to.
Yeah.
Exactly. I heard the other day someone mentioned to me that our police force is significantly understaffed. And I remember thinking to myself, instead of considering hiring people to enforce the law, perhaps what we need to consider is hiring persons like counselors and psychologists who work at police stations. Because oftentimes things that come into the police station are family related. There are situations that arise out of issues to do with visitation, issues to do with domestic violence, issues to do with children in the home. And having that type of expertise at the first instance, I think, could go a long way to solving these issues that crop up later in relation to family matters.
And having them dealt with in an expedient manner as well, because often that's one of the other things we hear, that it takes too long. So if we can avoid, again, it ending up in the court system, but it's being properly dealt with, then like you said, it takes care of that whole backlog, and then it could possibly address a problem that could have been contained, getting really big and out of hand. So I like what you're saying there. How do we make this kind of thing connect? What needs to happen? You know the process from several angles.
I think the first thing that needs to happen is that our parliament needs to perhaps have commission an inquiry for a green paper to be eventually written for us to have significant legislative reform. When these laws came into place that dealt with rights of the children and access and family matters, they were cutting edge, for lack of a better phrase, in terms of the legal reform happening in Barbados at that time. Mm-hmm. However, as with all things, it becomes outdated. One of the things we must remember is that law is supposed to reflect our beliefs as a society, our beliefs and our culture as a society. But in order for it to do that, it has to be constantly updated. You'll find that countries that have legislative reform happening actively and regularly tend to have what we think of as more advanced laws. So your guest who spoke about rights to paternity leave,
yes,
in certain European countries, that sort of thing happens as a result of legislative reform, where the legislation is literally trying to keep up with
the time,
the society and with the times. And we don't do that here. Again, it takes a long time to reform laws, and by the time you do any of itself become outdated. But we're in a prime position right now, given that we have money can pass essentially any we want. So we are in a good position right now to draw this issue to the attention of the current government and see how quickly they can deal with this, because we know that they can pass laws quickly. They do it when they need to. So it's about us as a people empowering ourselves, lobbying our MPs, that this is an issue that is serious and that we would like to see the reform happening on.
Yeah, we talk a lot about, you know, making society better, but making our country better by making family units better. And if we're going to get that spilling out and overflowing of goodness, it really has to start there in that unit, and from the ground up, kind of trying to nip it in the bud, trying to address all the major problems, the problems that can spin out of control and seriously impact our overall bottom line. So I think that this is absolutely important. We heard so much from a number of persons, and you would have been privy to hearing other stories about the problems with access and paternity, and then we talked about relationships. And so much of it all is wrapped up in respect and communication. Isn't that interesting? All these different things, but all wrapped up in that.
Yes, and it all comes back to, I also practice criminal law, and I can tell you that when you see the probation reports of persons who have been found guilty or pleaded guilty to criminal offenses, way too often you see that the close relationship between dysfunctional family relationships and problems with communication and improper socialization, which then manifests itself in criminal activity. Yeah. There is a very close correlation between dysfunctional families, and I want to be clear that when I speak about a dysfunctional family, I'm not talking about whether or not you're in a single parent home or both parents live at home. I'm talking about the relationships that people have with the persons in their family and what those bonds are based on. Mm-hmm. And when those are dysfunctional, and the very ready example is this issue of father figures being seen as M's, which results in dysfunctional figures and ideas about what it is to be a man and being ideas about masculinity.
I missed that. Being seen as
ATMs.
All right. Okay. Carry on.
And I'm saying that leads on to these dysfunctional relationships, mm-hmm. where my ideas of masculinity as a woman and a man are incorrect. My ideas about what is support and what is love are now based on things that cause dysfunction. If my idea of love is based on an idea that if you love me, you give me money, you can already see how that is the start of a public relationship, and that then manifests in the way your relationship to society.
Very interesting dynamics indeed. We are going to pause for a cause here, and we're going to come back and have everybody join us. Hopefully everybody will be able to rejoin the conversation as we take it up to the top of the hour. Stay tuned. It's 20 away from noon here in Barbados and across the Eastern Caribbean, and this is my 10 to 12, the final edition for June, and we've been taking a review of some of the subject matter that we discussed during the course of the month, which I dedicated to the men, because they too need their opportunity to say and share, and we've definitely had a lot of that. So we will see if everybody will be able to rejoin the discussion. But just to remind you that my guests today have been Dr. John Franklin. He's a urologist. We've also had with us Brittany Brathwaite. She is a human resources specialist. Gerald Walcott, membership officer with Men's Empowerment Network Support. We've also heard from attorney at law Shion Lange and Ryan McCollin, assistant secretary treasurer with Men's. So let me say welcome back to those of you who are able to continue with the discussion now. So clearly there are a lot of things that need to be addressed, a number of challenges that men are indeed dealing with. So this is an opportunity where we can all talk and engage, so feel free to interject where you see an interesting point that you'd like to respond to. But I'm coming back to you, Mr. Walcott. Anything interesting from attorney at law Shion Lange that you wanted to comment on this time around?
Not she hit the nail right on the head as usual, right? She better be careful she don't get put out to the gender, because I see, I mean, she's one of the first professional women that I heard so vocal about this thing, you know, and I really appreciate it. And the fact that she's a lawyer, which means that eventually she will be one of those policymakers. So
Nice.
I'm really happy and pleased to hear her experience. And, you know, it kind of tells me that it is not totally hopeless for men, because we got people out there, and not men, but women
As well.
willing to,
Yeah.
willing to help fight that battle. And as you remember me clearly stated that, you know, men's are not about bashing women. It is
Did.
about working together to make this society the best possible society it can be.
Absolutely. Mr. McCollin, comments?
What I'll say here is, I think Mistress Long did a fantastic job bringing her substratum to the multifarious dynamic of access dealing with children and the legal system. It is imperative, and I'm very pleased, ma'am. Thank you very much for voicing and echoing and expressing yourself like that, by which I feel that I have some support.
This is good, and this is what's needed.
For
That was
real.
actually one of the things that you mentioned. The support is needed and necessary. If what would you want to see in terms of further engagement? Town halls might be different, so you might have to have a Zoom town hall. But what sort of forum would you like to see happen, or do you think would be impactful in terms of getting the challenges men are dealing with out there even more? And will the men show? Will they come forward?
If it were up to
Well,
me,
Okay, let's let Ms. Lange go first.
yeah, go ahead.
thank you. If it were up to me, I would like to see the research done in terms of, if it were possible, every single family matter that has been before the court in, let's say, the last 5 years, those persons be contacted and asked to give commentary on what their experiences were like, and that data to be analyzed to give us some guidance, because you will find, I think, trends in terms of persons who are unhappy with the outcome, persons who they themselves, I think the information is there already, in terms of, if I were to contact every single father that has been before the court dealing with issues of access and child support, and ask them, were you satisfied? What did you like about this process? What did you not like about this process? And the mothers also, because I am very much an ally of both men and women.
Yes.
I think that then information to know, well, these are the things that we are not addressing. Statistics show us, well, yes, this percentage of men feel as though they are not being heard. This percentage of men feel as though they are not getting enough time with their children. And if we saw that in real numbers, I think that we would go a long way toward finding the correct forms of reform to satisfy people.
Absolutely. You also mentioned last time, which I want you to reiterate, that um, paying money at a court does not mean access. You actually said access is a right, whether or not. I just want to make sure I understood you clearly. Do you mind reiterating what you mentioned in that regard?
I have no problem doing so. There are two different rights. There is a right that a child has to be financially supported by both the parents or the persons that are in the position of parents or guardianship. And there is a separate and unrelated right. This is a legal right to access to your child. Now, the way it is currently formulated in our law is that a parent has a right of access to a child. However, I am an advocate for legislative reform that